What happens when blood turns into betrayal? Power replaces loyalty, and silence becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. This channel dives into stories where family isn't safe, love isn't honest, and success is built on secrets meant to stay buried. Here, promotions come with knives in the back, marriages hide double lives, and smiles in the boardroom mask years of resentment. These are stories about walking away not in defeat, but with patience sharp enough to dismantle empires, about laughter born from knowing too much, about husbands whose spotless reputations depend on silence, and what happens when that silence finally breaks. Every story peels back the illusion of perfect families, perfect businesses, and perfect marriages. If you believe betrayal always reveals the truth and revenge doesn't need to be loud to be devastating, then you're exactly where you belong. Stay close because some exits are only the beginning. The day the corner office changed hands, the building felt colder, like the walls themselves had chosen sides. A sister stood behind the glass desk, posture rehearsed, smile polished for investors and lawyers, not for blood. That smile carried years of quiet resentment, every late night ignored, every sacrifice rewritten as entitlement. The announcement came fast, clean, and public. Position eliminated. Access revoked. Security already waiting. It wasn't about performance. The numbers proved loyalty. It was about erasing history and tightening control. What hurt most wasn't the dismissal, it was the precision. Files reassigned, passwords changed, calendars wiped as if decades of work had never existed. The family business had been built on shared memories, handshakes over kitchen tables, risks taken when banks said no. Now it was being laundered into something sterile, owned by one voice that had waited patiently for power. That voice never understood how many secrets lived in the bones of the place. Every contract carried a story, every vendor had a favor owed, and every favor led back to a marriage no one dared question. The husband, celebrated, charming, always one step ahead, had threaded himself through the company like a silent partner. Private meetings labeled strategy hid side deals that funneled money through shell accounts. Expense reports paid for weekends that weren't business at all. A spotless image protected by silence and trust. The firing was meant to silence the only witness who remembered the early shortcuts, the signatures added after hours, the loans repaid off the books. It was supposed to be humiliating. Instead, it was revealing. Loyalty vanished the moment power arrived, and blood proved thinner than ambition. The sisters' eyes never met the truth behind the smile, because that truth could end a marriage and collapse an empire. Walking out past familiar desks felt surreal. Employees looked away, afraid association itself could be punished. Yet freedom hummed under the shock. There was relief in knowing the mask had finally slipped. Control had changed hands, but knowledge hadn't. The family believed history could be erased with one signature. They forgot who had written most of it. Power didn't take everything that day. It exposed everything that mattered. The termination should have felt devastating, but laughter almost slipped out instead. Not because it wasn't cruel, but because it was absurd. Power had shifted into hands that had no idea how fragile the illusion really was. A signature on a termination letter doesn't erase decades of quiet protection, especially when that protection kept an entire empire standing. For years, the business survived on shortcuts disguised as tradition. Numbers were rounded when they shouldn't have been. Approvals appeared after deadlines, ink drying overnight. Audits passed because the right documents were placed in the right folders, always just in time. Those skeletons stayed buried because someone remembered where the dirt was moved and why. That memory wasn't valued until it was threatened. The sister delivering the news looked confident, almost triumphant. There was no awareness that the decision came from someone who had never handled the mess behind the curtain. Every smile in that room depended on silence. Every promotion rested on secrets never meant for daylight. The firing wasn't strategic, it was careless. The most dangerous secret of all wore a wedding ring. The husband built a reputation as the golden man, faithful, brilliant, untouchable. Investors trusted him, family praised him. No one questioned the unexplained transfers routed through friendly vendors or the consulting fees paid to companies that didn't exist. Trips labeled conferences were weekends with someone who wasn't a spouse. The image stayed perfect because someone chose loyalty over truth. That loyalty ended the moment security was called. The laughter came from knowing how easily everything could unravel. Silence had been mistaken for weakness. Protection had been mistaken for ignorance. The family believed the business belonged to blood and titles, forgetting it had survived on discretion. Walking away felt lighter than expected. There was clarity in watching arrogance replace caution. Every forged approval, every hidden account, every carefully covered affair sat untouched, waiting. No threats were needed, no confrontation required. Knowledge alone shifted the balance. The sister thought the story ended with a termination. The husband believed his reputation was permanent. Neither understood that silence, once broken, doesn't need to shout to destroy everything built on it. Behind the polished confidence in the boardroom stood a marriage carefully stitched together with lies. The husband knew how to command a room: steady voice, reassuring smiles, promises that sounded like strategy. At home, those same skills blurred truth into something easier to believe. Late nights were framed as dedication. Locked phones were explained as discretion. Love has a way of softening instincts that would otherwise scream. The company became the perfect cover. Private deals slipped through under the label of opportunity. Money moved quietly, funneled through vendors no one questioned because trust had already been established. Approval chains bent when his name appeared. No one wanted to challenge the man everyone admired. Affairs were hidden the same way: whispered conversations, sudden conferences, gifts charged to accounts designed to look legitimate. Everything improper wore a professional mask. For years, the red flags lined up neatly, each one folded away for the sake of peace. It felt easier to believe in ambition than betrayal, easier to accept exhaustion than infidelity. The business thrived, the marriage appeared solid, and silence did the heavy lifting. That silence wasn't ignorance, it was hope. Hope that loyalty would be returned, hope that the man admired by everyone else was the same one sharing a life behind closed doors. Then, betrayal came from an unexpected direction. The firing at work stripped away the final layer of denial. Suddenly, every unexplained transfer mattered. Every name on a receipt meant something different. Patterns emerged that could no longer be ignored once protection was gone. What once felt like isolated incidents revealed a system built on deception. The husband never imagined how much had been seen and quietly absorbed. He believed confidence was enough to erase suspicion. He believed love would keep secrets buried. But love doesn't survive humiliation, and loyalty doesn't endure betrayal dressed as progress. The marriage had been used as camouflage, just another asset to manage. Walking through the aftermath brought clarity instead of grief. The truth no longer needed permission to exist. Every hidden deal, every affair, every dollar misdirected stood exposed in memory, sharp and undeniable. The family business, the marriage, and the image presented to the world were all built on the same fragile foundation. And foundations built on lies always crack the moment the weight shifts. Walking out wasn't defeat, it was calculation. Every step toward the exit carried more control than any argument ever could. The insults delivered in polished language, the signatures signed without hesitation, the quiet escort past familiar desks. All of it was logged, not felt. Chaos would have been easy. Patience required discipline. Time had always been an ally. Years inside the business taught how systems bend before they break. Documents don't disappear just because access is revoked. Conversations linger longer than people expect. The family believed removal meant erasure, never realizing how much knowledge had already been carried out, neatly organized and waiting. Silence wasn't surrender, it was storage. The husband mistook distance for defeat. Confidence followed him everywhere, into meetings, into new alliances, into another woman's arms. His reputation remained polished, unaware that the same habits that built it would undo it. Money continued to move through channels labeled routine. Side agreements stayed hidden behind friendly vendors. Affairs stayed disguised as business travel. He felt untouchable because no one challenged him openly. What he never noticed was the pattern he repeated. The same forged approvals, the same off-book transfers, the same careless confidence that assumed loyalty would last forever. Betrayal at work severed the last reason to protect him. Every secret once shielded by love now stood exposed, not in anger, but in clarity. Patience reshaped everything. Records were allowed to age into relevance. Conversations were remembered word for word. When questions eventually surfaced, answers came calmly, backed by timelines and proof. No accusations were thrown. Facts spoke without emotion. Careers built on shortcuts began to wobble. A marriage built on deception lost its audience. The sister's empire started cracking under scrutiny she never anticipated. Investors grew cautious. Audits deepened. Trust evaporated quietly, the same way loyalty once had. The husband's charm failed when numbers no longer aligned and names surfaced where silence was expected. The illusion of perfection collapsed without a single raised voice. Revenge didn't arrive screaming through the doors. It arrived on schedule, dismantling everything that believed it was untouchable. If this story made you feel the tension, the betrayal, and the quiet power of patience, don't let it end here. These stories expose what families hide, what marriages protect, and what silence is really worth. Hit like if you felt every twist. Subscribe if you want more stories where truth wins without shouting. And turn on notifications so you never miss what unravels next. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply letting the truth speak for itself.